share my screen. Give me a couple of nods if you all can see my presentation. Everything good? Perfect. Okay. So welcome to 2024, a few months late. It happens to be Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So Rachel and I were talking, and I was like, I need to host a conference or host a couple of these webinars. So here we are. Thank you all for joining. And let's kind of get right to it. All right. So who am I? Partner, I'm a technology partner and CIO of Eccezion Technology. I've been doing this for quite a few years. Grew up in the healthcare space, so that makes me very much into compliancy, some different things, so HIPAA compliancy, PCI compliance, but with that comes a lot of security terms and things that I have to prepare my customers for, and also, the places that I work as well. So, what is cybercrime? And it's really just a new type of crime that's out there. Cybercrime is just illegal activities using computers and digital devices and internet. It's interesting that I specifically call out digital devices, and we'll kind of go over that in a little bit, but keep that in mind, digital devices, okay? So, common types of cybercrime. Back in the day, we all watch these movies and we think of hacking. We think of the person in their parents' basement. Just yeah, that's not always it. That's actually not how hacking works nowadays. Um, Phishing still probably one of our most prevalent that are out there. We're going to do a lot of phishing training here in a second. Some other ones, ransomware. We all hear about ransomware. Somebody gets hit with ransomware and suddenly everything's getting encrypted. We're going to go over that one. Identity theft, online fraud, some different ways to think about cybercrime, and I'll go over that as well. And denial of service. It's going to be a new term for some of you, but we'll go over that. So let's dive right in. Hacking. The main goal is to get them into your systems or your network. Okay, so the bad thing about hacking is it's not always noticed. They're there to steal, alter, destroy things. Keyloggers, especially bad. So a keylogger, an example of a keylogger is it's an application that runs on your computer that all it does is grab username and passwords wherever it possibly can, grabs those keystrokes, keylogger. And all it does is it sends that data away. It's extremely hard to actually find these keyloggers, but there are ways that we can do that. Um, just know that those are out there. Often you won't even notice that something's running on your workstation. Your antivirus might not even pick it up. And you'll only know when somebody goes to transfer money out of your 401k or they're trying to log into different accounts that you may have. Hacking as a service it's always kind of amazing when I bring this up to people and they don't know about it. Basically, these are people that are paid to hack you. These are individuals that are getting paid just to do this service. Because cybersecurity or like the cyber threats out there, it's a business. It's not a good business. It's not one that I'd necessarily want to be a part of, but it's out there. So people are getting paid to basically hack you to create a breach, to steal, alter, destroy data that's out there. There's also a lot of motivation that's behind this. Financially motivated. That's where it's a business, right? Hacktivism. These are people that are trying to prove a point. They're trying to get out there and disseminate some information or whatever they may want to do. And then espionage. Okay, so there's actually some new hacking that's been happening that I've been hearing quite a bit about, and it all surrounds the fact that somebody could get a job from overseas. They get a job here in the U.S. and all they're here to do is actually get the bad threat actors into your network. So they're there to actually help them get in. And you don't really understand that that's going to happen until it actually happens. So it's best to just kind of be aware of these things so that way we can try to get in front of it. Ransomware, pretty commonly talked about in the news. That's when a piece of software gets into your network that encrypts all the data that it can see. So the important thing is anything that it can see. Um, then these attackers will demand a ransom um, for the decryption key, which always doesn't work. it's really common in both business and individuals. Like this can hit you at any time. Okay. Some of these ransomwares are smart enough to know when they've gotten your backups, when they can see your backups to make sure that those are included in the ransom. So it's a problem because not only will they hit you once for the decryption, but they will often hit you a second time if you decide to pay the ransom with releasing your data. They'll say, "Oh, it's great. We decrypted all your information." They're super nice to you when you call too. Um, they're like, "Oh, if you don't want us to release all the data that we just encrypted, guess what? You got to pay us again." Still being super nice about it because it's a business. Okay. Identity theft. This one's always out there. They're always trying to steal your personal information. Some way to commit fraud, get your social security number, get financial details, try to write a check to themselves as you. And it usually, all of your data is out there, and you got to pay attention to like where your data's been breached to see where some of the identity theft may be coming from. And they'll use this information to phish you in different ways, and we'll go over later what the different types of phishing are. And they can just gather a ton of information about you to help them in your identity theft. So, got to be very diligent with the information that's out there on the internet. Online fraud. So, we see this one, an uptick of this one quite a bit, and it's going to malicious fake online stores where you're trying to buy something and it's actually completely fraudulent. They're just taking the money and getting away with it in a lot of ways. Auction fraud's kind of new to me. I actually had to look this one up a little bit because I've seen an uptick of it in the information, but the auction fraud is really just they put up fake auction sites, and then as you're making the payments, yeah, it's the same thing as just having like a fake online store, kind of that same premise. Investment fraud, you think you're investing in something and maybe you're not investing in what you think you're investing in. So, all things to be cautious on while you're online. Okay. Distributed denial of service, DDoS attacks. We see these a lot too. A lot of times, all they are these hundreds of these little bots, and these little bots are computers. They could be your smart TVs, other IoT devices like your Alexas. Depending on how, if there is a an attack for these, it's a piece of software that's loaded into that computer, that device, and all it is to make web traffic going towards either a public IP address, which is basically your address when you're on the internet, or towards a website to take down that website. There's a bunch of these little botnets that sit all around the world. There could be hundreds of thousands of them. They're pieces of software that sit there and they look relatively not malicious. But when they are called by a server to do something, that's actually how the actual denial of service occurs. It takes down that site by causing so much traffic to it that it can't do anything else. It has to actually has to handle that traffic before it can actually do what it's supposed to. So imagine if we've installed the software on thousands of devices all over the world. Maybe it's somebody's side-loaded their Amazon Fire Stick. You hear about the people jailbreaking their Fire Sticks, right? You don't know what software is technically on there. It could be a part of one of these denial of service attacks, which if your device that's been sideloaded or jailbroken is a part of that, you could actually be liable for this as well. So just something to kind of be cautious on and making sure that you're using a good antivirus or not sideloading or jailbreaking things. So phishing, email or text phishing. So text phishing is a new thing. Really just aims to trick you into providing some sort of information. Could be passwords, username passwords, could be credit card, banking information. These are becoming so sophisticated, guys. I can't stress this enough, especially with now AI. In the past, we used to be able to rely on a lot of our emails. The phishing emails were kind of easy to pick out because let's be honest, a lot of the threat actors, English wasn't their first language. So, they used some weird verbiage in there so we could catch them because they just didn't sound right. But now it's becoming much better and it's harder. There's also some other things that I'll talk about in a little bit about types of phishing that also make them extremely sophisticated. Some of these email or text phishing also try to get you to install malware, which would include your ransomware or Emotet and TrickBot. Those two, for whatever reason, just keep coming back up all the time. They're kind of older pieces of software. And what are these? You may be asking yourself. All they do, these are those keyloggers. We actually ran into one of these pieces of software. An individual came to us and said, "Hey, somebody logged into one of my accounts. This is just somebody I know out in the community. They were just like, somebody tried to log into all my accounts. Can you take a look?" I found that they had Emotet and TrickBot on their workstation, and they only caught it because they were logging into their 401k and transferring a bunch of money out. That's it. So we actually helped them get rid of it, and all's good now. So different types of phishing. So I talked about this in the last slide. There's regular phishing. That's where you just send out the exact same message to a ton of people, see who clicks on it, see who enters information, whatever it may be. Spear phishing. This is the one that's maybe a little bit more sophisticated than regular phishing because these are individuals that are targeting you. They're doing their research. They're looking at Robin's social media information, her LinkedIn information. They're looking at anything that they can find on Robin, and they are targeting her. They're crafting an email that maybe has to do with Robin's alma mater, where she went to college, her husband's information, any kids, anything like that. They are targeting specifically her, and they're only going to send that message to her. Whaling, similar to a spearfish attack, but that's really where they're kind of looking at just going after like the CEO of an organization. Phishing is voice phishing, so kind of like your telemarketer person calling you. Smishing, text messages coming to you. You probably have an influx of, we're in a election season right now, so you probably have a whole bunch of ones that seem like they could be SMS phishing that are probably just, somebody trying to get you politically to talk to them. Clone phishing. Clone phishing's very interesting too, because if a threat actor gets into a workstation, they're able to access all of previous emails being sent. What they're going to do is they're going to grab a message that has been sent and they're going to try to make one that looks exactly like it, but maybe change the URL to something that is theirs to send it out. Farming, super interesting too, kind of a newer term that's out there. This is where the individuals are making clone websites, and then the clone websites are trying to get you to log in. So an example of this, an easy example would be like Microsoft, going to Microsoft.com, but maybe they misspell it just a little bit, and they make the login page look very similar so that to try to get your credentials. All right. Common signs of a phished email. Okay, so things to look at. Look at the sender's email address. If it's suspicious at all, or you don't recognize it, might be one of your first flags to say, "Hey, guess what? I don't trust you." Almost all phishing emails try to make it seem urgent or scary. They're trying to get you to click or do something that you elsewise wouldn't do. And so if it's trying to raise some urgency, just take your time, stop, look at it. Grammar or spelling mistakes. I have another presentation that I do where I say look for grammatical errors, and I may or may not have spelled grammatical incorrectly, or even if that's a word. It was great because I'm not the best with this one. I know there's some other individuals that are a part of this seminar right now that maybe wouldn't catch grammatical errors. But things to look at. Generic greetings. You'll find this a lot, and I have a slide a little bit later on specifically on AI with generic greetings. So look for that if they're not actually talking to you specifically, or they don't sound right. Lots of times AI is helping these people nowadays. So those generic greetings have become pretty much standard. Unexpected attachments or links. If there's a link in the email itself, I tell people don't click on that. Go to the website itself. I think that's even one of my slides further on. Uh, just don't use them. Anything that there's a link inside of the actual email, you should be able to get to it on their website. All right. So techniques to avoid these phishing attacks. Verify the sender. What I tell people a lot of times is if you reply to a phishing email, which you generally should not, let's say you know the sender, but they sent you a really weird email at an odd time. That's actually my second bullet point there. At an odd time, email them back separately or call them and say, hey, did you mean to send this to me? Because lots of times you'll catch it right then and there. Hover over the links to see where they're going. A lot of the new software that we use will actually, the people that use the URL shorteners, my software actually catches that and it's like, no, 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 don't let them do that. So the URL shorteners, like where you see like tiny URL, you have to be very suspicious of those. Avoid clicking on any attachments. And a few other things. Enabling MFA, so multi-factor authentication. So a lot of times these are just trying to bring you to like a Microsoft login page. MFA will help with that because they can't really duplicate that MFA prompt for you. And always delete the email, go directly to the source. If you got it from your bank, if your bank sent you an email with an attachment, it's always in your bank. You just go directly to the bank website, log in, do it that way. Don't trust anything within an email. All right, so URLs, talked about this a little bit. So secure versus unsecure URLs, so web addresses, HTTP versus HTTPS. So lots of times you'll just notice that you have a little tiny lock in the upper left-hand side of a URL. That means that it's HTTPS. That means it's secure. HTTP is kind of bad. It's not secure. It's really vulnerable. So I tell people, go to secure sites. If you're going to a secure site, then it's, you're generally good because there's some methods involved there that actually help those kind of be more secure because you have to have certificates, things like that. But you also still have to look for legitimate sites. So for the example here, Eccezion.com, a fake site, ecc.ezion.com. So they've actually changed my URL, okay? Fake site, ExcezionAccounting.com, doesn't exist. Or misspelled. I actually misspelled Eccezion. These are common things that attackers will do. We utilize with all of our customers a web filter. So we look for things like this on websites that people are going to. So if it's a new website that's got a misspelling of a legitimate site, we'll actually catch that and we'll say, hey, you maybe shouldn't trust this, okay? Also, use search engines for websites versus clicking on links. So Google, Eccezion Accounting, Eccezion IT, you'll generally find our legitimate sites are going to show up higher than the non-legitimate ones that are just kind of showing up out of nowhere. What do you do with these? A lot of people ask me, does reporting the email do a whole lot? Well, it depends on which company you use for emails. If you use Google, absolutely, it's going to do great things. They're actually going to update their algorithm. It's going to get much better. If you report it to Microsoft, we don't see that happens as quickly, but it's still good. Report it as spam, good to go. If you have any tools, if you have IT that actually integrates some of those tools, you can report it directly to your IT department. So it'd be something worth having that discussion with them if that's available. Don't click or respond to anything and delete the email in the last case. Just when in doubt, throw it out. Okay, it works with leftover food and it also works with email phishing, right? And when in doubt, throw it out. Okay. All right, some things with AI phishing emails that we've been seeing. unusual grammar. AI, the more advanced it gets, if you're using AI to write all of your emails, you probably need to proof them just a little bit. There are still some weird grammatical things that it does. Repetitive phrasing. Um, this one, I can't say it enough. Read your AI generated things, okay? Formal or generic languages or inconsistent tone or style. Watch out for the words kindly. So if any of you went to ChatGPT right now and said, "Hey, write me an email," I bet you kindly is in there twice. Okay. And instead of thanks or anything like that, it's going to be best regards, your name. Um, Attention to this matter. You all know that you probably have seen this as one of those key things that it tends to write in there. Or the first line, "I hope this message finds you well." You're going to find that this is just common AI. You can actually get your AI to work for you and do a little bit better. But guess what? If we're using it, so are these attackers. So right now, these are key phrases in 2024. But by next year, by 10 minutes from now, they might not be used as much. Okay. As AI gets better, so are these emails. All right. So some different things. I talked about keyloggers, ransomware attacks. You tend to hear about new threat acting groups that are on the rise. These are a bunch of individuals that all band together to try to hack, get ransomware to basically, charge you money. Um, on the personal side, I tend to see people get fake reservation links for hotel or travel related things. Be cautious of these. They are on the rise. We see them quite a bit. Um, we see malware or really just trying to hijack business Facebook accounts to then send just grossness out. So you got to be careful on those social media platforms. Some other threat actor things, skimmers. We still see skimmers like credit card skimmers. So if you use your business credit card different places, whether it's for gas, things like that, you need to be cautious of those skimmers. Fake cybersecurity companies that are really just malicious people that are out there to try to hack you. That's still a thing. That's on the rise, so be cautious of it. Scam texting, we talked about that on the SMS side. So if you all could just stop clicking on fish emails, that'd be great. So love this one, use it all the time. Love this movie too, especially when they take the printer out into the field. All right, so this is a very busy slide. If you, we're going to start in the upper left of your screen. So we're going to look at on an email. We're going to look at who it's from, who it was to, if they masked who it was to. So let's say it's blank. You all have probably seen that. These are all kind of your red flags. So the from, maybe it's an address you don't know. Maybe it's, maybe it is somebody you know. So you want to scrutinize that. You want to look at who is to. You want to look at the date and time that it was sent, because remember, these threat actors tend to work a lot at night. The subject, is it irrelevant, or is it does it even match what's actually in the body of that message to you? Does it have attachments, the content, hyperlinks? All of these things are things that I kind of already talked about. So this slide, definitely great. Work on getting this one sent out through the chamber. And so you all can kind of have an idea of things to look at, some red flags, things for you to just monitor and just be aware of. Okay. Now, I always bring this up because what do you do when you're attacked? Not if anymore, it's when. I think everybody that's on this seminar right now probably has had some level of being attacked at some time. Um, Not all attacks are the same, but a lot of these steps are just going to be like a baseline. These are things that you should probably be doing, especially in your business. Okay. Stay calm. First and foremost, you always have to stay calm. The average attack, if it's a ransomware attack, it's going to take you a month to 2 months to fully recover. Now, let that sink in. If you're a bigger business, It's going to take time. So stay calm. I understand you're going to want to panic, but you have to, right? You have to stay calm because you could make mistakes during any process of this. Even if you, especially if you have cyber insurance, you're going to want to stay calm. Okay. Whoever your IT is, whoever supports you in any way, if it's your nephew's second cousin once delayed, contact them as soon as possible. If it's us, if it's me, the sooner you get somebody that has an idea of how IT and how any sort of threat works, the better off you're going to be. The best thing that you can do, probably step number one, is also disconnecting your computer from the internet. That's turning off Wi-Fi, unplugging it, whatever it may be. Try to refrain from turning it off. Okay. You could also go to your Comcast, unplug it. Totally good with that. Okay. Document everything, absolutely everything. Take pictures with your cell phone. Um, if you have any sort of timestamps that you can look at in like what time you've unplugged your Comcast, what time you noticed it, what was the last time that you were actually in front of the computer. Start documenting it as soon as possible because your cyber insurance is going to want this information from you. So you want to document everything so that way when if you do go to an insurance company or you have to report it to some regulatory body, that you have all this information available. Okay. Now, the next thing, the biggest thing, we have to isolate that infection, whatever it may be. So if your computer is the only one in your entire company that has this problem, you're probably going to want to disconnect them all from the internet, but just making sure that that one is disconnected and scanning for threats. Scan for threats that's going to be using your antivirus that's built into your computer or one that you pay for. And we got to make sure to take measures to make sure that the one device that's infected doesn't get all the rest sick. Okay. It's kind of like having your kids go to school with the cold, keep them home, right? Same thing with your computers. Try to isolate it, try to make sure that it's not getting everything else sick in the entire world. Now, you have to identify it. You have to figure out what it is, especially if it's something like ransomware. Some ransomware does have decryption like tools out there that the government actually has developed, and there's ways to recover it without actually paying anybody. Um, Not always the case. I think I even talk about that in a later slide. Uh, a virus scan is probably going to give you a ton of information about what you need to identify the actual infection that's there. But on the IT side, we have to identify it to know exactly what we're working with in order to remediate it. Okay. Um, you want to identify it too, so that way you know how aggressively you need to respond to it. If it's something that's extremely bad and is probably grabbing data from your workstation and sending it somewhere, you're going to need to identify it so that way you can notify the appropriate people, or even yourself. If you have files that are on your workstation, maybe that Excel spreadsheet that's on your desktop that's passwords, the name of it is passwords, and all of your passwords are in there. You know who you are. You need to know to what level you need to actually be changing passwords across the board. Okay. With something like ransomware, you have two options. One, pay the ransom. There's problems with that. The government doesn't tend to like you wire transferring a ton of money overseas to these threat actors, and they could get you. The other one is restoring from backups. I can't stress how important backups are nowadays. If you rely on a device and you're not backing it up, you're just asking for a problem. I think a couple of individuals in this group could probably attest to that, where device, maybe a laptop, a laptop, was may have crashed and they were in a hard spot for a few days. So, yep. So decryption files, man, I already went through this. Now look at me, I was just blazing ahead. You could decrypt the files if you. Some of the older ransomwares do have these decryption tools available. They don't always work, but it's a good start. Okay. Again, oh look, I'm ahead again. They'll hit you twice for sure. Nowadays, that's just a common thing. They'll get you for not only uh, decrypting the files, but then making sure that your documents aren't all leaked out to the internet because they'll actually show you the files that they encrypted. It's pretty scary. All right. So what happens if I clicked on a link and I went to a website and I entered in a whole bunch of my information? Let's say I went to a fake Microsoft or a fake Google account. One, contacting your IT, always a good start. It's also a good idea to set up fraud alert on whatever it may be. Let's say it's a bank website. Um, Turning on multi-factor authentication. I love this one. I tend to recommend it to everybody anywhere. I know sometimes it's a bit annoying, but just do it. Trust me, you're going to thank me later. There's other ways that you can actually fix this one. Enabling web content filtering. I talked about this earlier, where you can actually keep those potentially malicious websites from actually even showing up for me being able to do anything. You also, if you've entered in information, that password is now dead. It's dead. Don't use it ever again. So they will grab that information. They're going to try it everywhere. If you're a type of person that uses it everywhere, that same password, one, mm, yeah, you're going to want to change that everywhere. I like unique passwords. Password managers are amazing. In certain scenarios, you can even consider changing your username. It sounds so crazy. So instead of using um, rwalker at gmail.com, Robin might change it to walker.robin at gmail.com. So that way she has a different username. Or maybe make it a little bit incognito, maybe change your username so it's not associated with your name, right? Maybe it's an old nickname, your username, who cares? It's not like you're going to into an AOL chat room, dating myself at this point. All right, so malware, different things to look for on your workstation. Suddenly your files or your desktop are encrypted. This would be in a ransomware. Maybe you're getting an alert that pops up and it's repeated and it just constantly. Maybe there's new software that is on your workstation that you didn't put there and you don't know why it's there. Could be malware. Lots of pop-ups or ads, or you're going to a website and it's redirecting you somewhere else, the odds are you might have some malware on there. New default search engines, if you like Google, if you like Bing, those are probably going to be your primary two. But if you have a different one that you don't know, it's very possible. Or your homepage keeps changing. Awesome. Could potentially be malware, or you're sending emails you didn't write. This one's fun. Can happen. So keep an eye out for these things. If you have any of these, contact your IT provider or start doing some virus scanning on your workstation. Let's talk about passwords. Just real quick, let's talk about password hygiene. Every company that I run into, almost 90, I'd say 99% of them have terrible passwords. Okay. You all are using the same password everywhere, or you're using password one, 1, 2, 3, 4, ABCD. Yeah, don't use these. Make them unique. Invest in a password manager. I really like Keeper, LastPass, and there's a whole bunch of them. There have been some breaches. I know LastPass had some issues. Keeper hasn't had any. Knock on something. But everything's kept in an individual vault. So at least then you would know that they're not being, taken from a file on your desktop. Okay, that's terrible hygiene. So start thinking about where these passwords are, what they are to. Turning on multi-factor is a great first step for all of your passwords that are out there, especially on your email, because multi-factor is going to prompt your phone. The odds are the attacker is not going to be able to intersect that at all. Now, there's some new things that are out there with passwords. Only changing your passwords if you suspect that it's been compromised. That's new. We used to say all the time, passwords need to be changed every 90 days, but that's actually changing. There's actually a government body that's actually saying, okay, it's probably not as important. Um, Requiring unique passwords for all applications, I probably drive everybody crazy because I make a new password for each thing that I get into. Using strong passwords, which are great if you do like a phrase, um, like I like to eat apples at midnight. That's it. 14, something random, right? You could actually have it associated with the actual application that you're going into. So let's say it's a Facebook password. This is not my Facebook password 2402. I don't know, just made that one up. So things like that. Oh, there was one last thing on there, and I said it before. If you're hit with a threat and you've actually used a password, maybe you've entered it, that password's now dead. Don't use it again because they will. Some MFA threats that have come out. This is just basically where a threat actor finds your username and passwords, and they will start sending you MFA requests until you get MFA fatigue. And that goal is for you to either accept it or turn it off. So if you're being prompted with these MFA alerts, you're probably going to want to change the passwords. And it's annoying that this happens, but it's by far one of the best things that you can do for cybercrime. All right, so we're doing pretty good on time. All right, so another tip for you all, USB drives. Never plug in a USB drive into your computer that is not yours or your company's. Just plain and simple. If it's not yours, don't plug it in. Okay. There's things that can come in with these flash drives that a lot of people don't think about till I tell them, like, hey, if that's not yours, don't use it. Okay. There's malware. There's some different pieces of software that can come in. I've actually even remote access could even come in through a flash drive. I tell people one of the things that we can do, and this always scares people. One of our test. Like when we do fishing training for an organization, what we'll do is I'll go to an organization, I'll just leave a flash drive somewhere in the organization. I just leave it there. And I make one file on that thing that says like company name, financial data, 2024 or whatever year it is. And I leave it. That piece of software that actually looks to be like a document of some sort, financial data, it actually calls back to me. It tells me who accessed it, what they did. If I was malicious, if I was a malicious person, it could actually allow me in. Could allow me to turn on your webcam without you knowing. Okay. If it's not yours, don't plug it in. A lot of people ask me about free and public Wi-Fi. My answer to this is no. Just say no. It's terrible. Don't do it. There's a thing called man in the middle where I could go to an or like some coffee shop. Let's say I'm down at Toast and Roast and I get onto their Wi-Fi. I broadcast my own free Wi-Fi through my computer. I've joined their Wi-Fi with my laptop, and then I'm using my laptop to then broadcast out a new free Wi-Fi. When you join mine, I can see pretty much everything that you're doing. I get all of your web traffic that's coming through there. I could then use that to distribute malware to you. I can do session hijacking, which is a really fancy way to say if you were on your laptop at that point and you logged into your Facebook, I could steal that session and then use it to basically authenticate to Facebook or your bank or whatever it may be as you, because I have the token that basically is passed to you that allows it in there. They can also steal your information. It's just say no. Use your own Wi-Fi. Most of the carriers nowadays allow you to put your phone into hotspotting. These are all really good ideas. Don't use somebody else's free Wi-Fi. Okay. There are a few exceptions to this. I will tell you that like a school, generally pretty good. Their security is way better than just general free Wi-Fi. But when in doubt, stay off it. Okay. But if you must, If you're one of those people that are like, Eric, you're unrealistic, use a VPN. There's so many VPN providers out there. VPN means virtual private network. It basically makes a secure tunnel for you to get out to the internet without somebody being able to steal a bunch of that information. It allows you a ton of privacy. I happen to really like Nord, but there's a bunch of them out there. So when in doubt, use a VPN. Most of the people on this webinar I know. So it's like, if you want some recommendations, throw me a couple of like, hey, what VPNs do you think I should use? I'll send those to you. If you're going abroad, if you're traveling in Europe, definitely a good idea. It also hides your IP address from like places like your actual internet provider could be like grabbing your web traffic. So it actually kind of helps you protect yourself from that manner. So they can't use your personal data. Um, so websites. Some people ask me like, hey, how can I protect my website? One, enable MFA for your admin console. Let's say it again. Like multi-factor authentication is really going to help you. There's different things. They want to grab your website to then host their malicious data that's on there or malicious content. So it's a good idea to back it up frequently. A lot of the big providers will give you either daily, weekly, or monthly backups. And as long as you're not storing like a huge database on here, generally you could even go a month back and it's going to be okay. You need to be updating your vulnerable plugins and software just because these things go out of date. You need to update them. The code that's behind them become like the threat actors are able to actually mess around with those plugins or the software that's loaded on your website. So you don't want that. You want to make sure that they're up to date so they're the most secure possible. If you have like a form where you're actually sending, let's say, get in contact with us, you want to add a CAPTCHA or some sort of logic where it's harder for the threat actors to just crawl your website and then enter in information without actually visiting there. Make sure you're using secure transactions, so HTTPS. So you're going to need to use a certificate that'll actually do SSL TLS encryption. So if you have any questions on that, Rachel or I can help you with any of these pieces. And there's also, you can use a web application firewall to block this traffic. So if any of these things, you're like, ooh, I'm not doing one of these things, or maybe you have a website and you have no idea what I'm talking about, let's have lunch. I'll definitely make sure that you are up to date and know everything that I know. A good other thing that you can implement, email filtering. These are add-on services. Microsoft's really good at telling you like, hey, I have this feature that you could do, but we're going to charge you for it. So a lot of these other third-party companies, they actually offer it as well. These are all customizable. So you can get rid of spam or phishing email domains. You can look at malicious or look at attachments, make sure they're not malicious. You can also rewrite them. So one thing that we do at Eccezion as a whole is if an attachment comes in, we actually recreate the PDF fully to make sure that nothing's embedded in that attachment. You can do URL filtering, which is web filtering. You can look for spoofed senders. We look for people that are trying to do impersonation, and we'll actually flag those for you. Or geoblock locations. So that means if you don't do any service in, let's say, Saudi Arabia, you could actually geoblock Saudi Arabia. So emails that actually originate from there, you just block automatically. You don't even ever see them. So some different things that you can do. How to be cyber proactive. Backups, backups, especially those vital systems. Enable MFA with logic. So with logic is new, right? I didn't talk about that before. Multi-factor authentication, if you are a business owner and you maybe want to get a little bit more advanced, MFA is great just by itself. But if you do MFA with logic, you generally have to pay for it. And it's not as much as you would think, but what the logic would look at is where are you trying to log in from? So let's say you're always in McHenry County, Illinois. You never visit outside of the US. You could put in logic that MFA is only allowed inside of the US. So if you get a call from, like, let's say somebody from India is trying to log into your account, it'll block you. It'll block that session. I was like, nope, you're not inside the US. Goodbye. Um, if you're a business, do an annual cybersecurity training. Okay, 100%. This will help anybody that's actually has email that is doing anything. It'll help you understand some different technologies that we have to do. Investing in a good antivirus software. There's a couple that we really like. Microsoft Defender, not the free version of Defender. If you have a high enough Microsoft account, you get Microsoft Defender. It is the best antivirus that you can possibly own. Email filtering, like I talked about, 24/7 monitoring. A lot of these threats are going to hit you in the middle of the night. So if you don't have 24/7 monitoring, you're probably going to miss it when it hits you. And then developing an incident response plan, because like I said earlier, it's not if, it's when. Okay. When you get hit with a cyber threat, how are you responding to it? So a little bit about us. I'm coming up right at the end here. This is all about Eccezion. We do business consulting. We're CPAs. I do the business technology, and Rachel does all of your business marketing. Questions? Wow, I just talked for almost an hour.
I have a question, Eric. You brought up the password storing services and the different companies that offer that. We have one through Goosehead, and they have been breached previously, so I've just never used it. You mentioned that you have one that has not been breached, knock on wood. But like, if I put all my passwords in one of those, because I do the consistent different passwords along all these different sources, aren't I then opening myself up to one source of then losing all of those password opportunities? And I'd have to reset like 60 of them versus 2 or 3.
So some of these, specifically the one that I prefer and I like is Keeper, the Keeper password manager. Keeper is interesting because they host all of the databases for your passwords are individualized. So your database is like the password that protects your database is only yours, right? You set that up at the beginning. So even if, let's say, they are breached, they're not going to be able to decrypt your personalized encryption code, if that makes sense. So your potential risk is less there because where a lot of the other ones were storing it kind of, you had your own container inside of there, but they could actually see it. So if that makes sense, that you're in, they put you in kind of your own little bucket, your own little island, that even if your bucket gets stolen, that there's minimal risk because they would have to know your personalized decryption key. So from our standpoint, I can't even decrypt it. If it is totally 100% yours, it's quite secure. But to your point, would I still make the recommendation if Keeper was breached to change your passwords? Yes. Does that matter as much if you have MFA enabled? Not as much. But the only other caveat to that is some people get a little lazy with MFA and they use Keeper to do their MFA code. So just be cautious on that because then you basically given potentially all the keys.
I have a question.
Sure.
If so like Carol orders clothes from certain companies that she purchases from. So she'll go on to those websites to get like the product information and possibly a picture. So Carol will also take a picture of the item and then Google search it, because you can do a reverse search on photos to see about getting the pictures to use for their websites, because that's what they tell us. But is that something that could potentially cause a virus or things like that based on like downloading either from Google or from the website itself?
So I tend to see this a lot more with like people that use manuals and things like that. And if it's similar, where there'll be websites that say that they host like a manual to something and they allow you to download it, Be cautious on those. Make sure that the website's legitimate before you were to download anything. Because once it's downloaded, it's kind of there.
Got it.
Your virus scanner could potentially look at it before you're opening it. But the odds are, if it's already been downloaded, it's probably a little too late.
Okay. Yeah, because I know that back in the day you could do that with like fonts, and I always get nervous when people are like, "Oh, I downloaded a font to use for a project," and I'm like, "Ah, don't do that."
And backgrounds are still the bane of my existence. Like people will be like, "Oh my gosh, I want to download this background," and I'm just like, "No, don't do that." Any more questions? Chris, I expected way harder out of you.
Well, I just have to be careful what I say because it's Goosehead's platform. So
Well, I mean, you did a really good job at like kind of going over a lot of stuff. So it was like every time I had a question, you answered it.
Good. Okay. Well, at that point, then I guess we have 2 minutes that I'll give you back to your day.
All right, Eric, before we go, could you share best way to get a hold of you or your social channels as well? I know you had the screen, but just something people could jot down or connect with you.
Yeah, if you go to our website, Eccezion, ECCEZION.com, you'll actually be, you'll get a whole contact us page, and you can contact us in any of those ways. Also, 815-344-1301, and that'll get you our main line, and get in contact with us. Or send me a message. I'm really heavily involved with the chamber. Send me a message. Love to meet and know everybody that's on here.
All right. Well, thank you very much. This was great information. And if you have anything, Eric, you want me to send out, I did jot down everybody who was on the call that had their name on there. And so I can email if there's any follow-up information you want me to email to everyone who participated. I'd be happy to do that. And again, in a few days, this will be on our YouTube channel as well. If anyone wants to go back and listen to any particular parts to hear it again. All right. Thanks for being here, everybody, and have a great rest of your day.
thanks, Eric. Great job.
Thank you.
See y'all.